There is a moment quiet and unremarkable when you first realize that the world is not a stage built for you alone. It might come in the hush of a crowded room, in the pause between words, or in the gentle ache of loneliness that follows a misunderstanding. In that moment, you sense perhaps for the first time that every person you meet is living a life as vivid and complex as your own. Their hopes, their fears, their silent battles, all as real as yours. And in that realization, a door opens. The world, once a landscape of strangers, becomes a tapestry of stories, each thread woven with longing, with need, with the quiet wish to be seen, heard, and understood. This is where true influence begins, not with clever words or force of will, but with the courage to step outside yourself and enter the world of another. Dale Carnegie understood this. He saw that the secret to winning friends and influencing people was not in dazzling them with your brilliance, but in awakening within them a desire, a want so eager, so alive that it draws them forward of their own accord. To arouse in the other person an eager want is not manipulation. It is the highest form of respect. It is the art of seeing, of listening, of understanding so deeply that you become a catalyst for their own dreams. But how do you do this? How do you move beyond the surface, beyond the transactional, and touch the heart of another human being? It begins, always, with self-awareness. Before you can hope to influence the world, you must first understand the landscape of your own mind. You must become a student of your own motives, your own desires, your own fears. For it is only in knowing yourself that you can begin to know others. Think of Abraham Lincoln, who in the darkest days of the Civil War would write letters he never sent, letters filled with anger, frustration, disappointment. He wrote them not to wound, but to understand himself, to master his own emotions before he spoke to others. Lincoln knew that leadership was not about imposing your will, but about aligning your heart with the hearts of those you lead. He listened, he reflected, he sought to understand before he acted. In doing so, he became not just a leader, but a unifier, a man who could arouse in others the eager want for peace, for unity, for something greater than themselves. Self-awareness is not a destination, it is a practice. It is the willingness to ask yourself again and again, what do I want? Why do I want it? How might my desires blind me to the needs of others? It is the humility to admit that you do not have all the answers, that your perspective is limited, that your truth is only one among many. And in that humility, you find strength, the strength to listen, to learn, to grow. Listening. The word is simple, but the act is rare. Most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. They wait for their turn, rehearsing their next point, their next defense, their next clever retort. But true listening is an act of surrender. It is the willingness to set aside your own agenda, your own judgments, and enter fully into the world of another. It is the discipline of presence, the art of being here now, with nothing between you and the person before you. Eleanor Roosevelt, a woman born into privilege and pain, understood the power of listening. She traveled the country, visiting factories, schools, hospitals, sitting with the forgotten and the voiceless. She listened not to gather ammunition, but to gather understanding. She knew that to influence people, you must first make them feel seen. You must show them through your attention that their story matters, that they matter. When you listen in this way, something extraordinary happens. Walls come down, defenses soften. The other person, sensing your genuine interest, begins to open up. They share not just their words, but their hopes, their fears, their dreams. And in that sacred space, you find the key to influence, not in argument, not in persuasion, but in empathy. For when you understand what another person wants, truly wants, you hold the power to help them achieve it. And in helping them, you help yourself. But empathy is not enough to arouse in the other person an eager want. You must go further. You must learn to see the world through their eyes, to feel what they feel, want what they want. This is not easy. It requires imagination, curiosity, and above all, humility. It requires you to set aside your own needs, your own desires, and ask, what does this person long for? What keeps them awake at night? What would make their hearts sing? Consider the story of Nelson Mandela, a man who spent 27 years in prison, yet emerged without bitterness, without hatred. How did he do it? By seeing his captors not as enemies, but as fellow human beings, men with families, with fears, with dreams of their own. Mandela understood that to change a nation, he had to change hearts. And to change hearts, he had to understand them. He listened, he learned, he sought common ground. He aroused in others the eager want for reconciliation, for forgiveness, for a future built together. This is the essence of influence, not domination, not coercion, but inspiration. The ability to awaken within another person a desire so strong, so authentic, that they move forward, not because they must, but because they want to. This is the power of the human connection. It is the power to transform lives, to build bridges, to create movements. But how do you cultivate this power in your own life? How do you become the kind of person who arouses in others an eager want? It begins with confidence. Confidence not in your own superiority, but in your own humanity. Confidence that is rooted in humility, in the knowledge that you are no better and no worse than anyone else, that your worth is not measured by your achievements, but by your ability to connect, to inspire, to serve. Confidence through humility is a paradox, but it is the foundation of all true leadership. It is the quiet assurance that you have something to offer, coupled with the openness to learn from everyone you meet. It is the willingness to admit your mistakes, to ask for help, to celebrate the successes of others. It is the courage to stand in your own truth, while honoring the truth of others. When you lead with this kind of confidence, people are drawn to you. They sense your authenticity, your integrity, your willingness to put their needs above your own. They trust you, not because you are perfect, but because you are real. And in that trust, you find the power to influence, not by force, but by example. But influence is not always easy. There will be times when you face criticism, when your motives are questioned, when your efforts are misunderstood. In these moments, it is tempting to defend yourself, to fight back, to prove your worth. But true strength lies in restraint, in the ability to handle criticism with grace, to listen for the truth in every complaint, to learn from every setback. Dale Carnegie wrote, "Any fool can criticize, condemn, and complain, and most fools do, but it takes character and self-control to be understanding and forgiving. When you are criticized, pause, breathe, ask yourself, is there truth in this? What can I learn? How can I grow? And if the criticism is unfounded, let it go. Do not let the opinions of others define you. Stand firm in your values, your vision, your purpose. Conflict, too, is inevitable. But conflict is not the enemy. It is the crucible in which character is forged. When you face disagreement, seek first to understand, listen with empathy, speak with honesty, and look for common ground. Remember that every person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind, be patient, be willing to forgive. In the end, the most powerful way to arouse in another person an eager want is to become genuinely interested in them. Not as a means to an end, but as an end in itself. People can sense when your interest is real, when your attention is sincere. They are drawn to those who make them feel important, who remember their names, their stories, their dreams. Dale Carnegie once said, "You can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you." This is the secret to being unforgettable. Not in what you say, but in how you make others feel. When you make someone feel seen, heard, and valued, you leave a mark that endures long after words are forgotten. Leadership, then, is not a title or a position. It is a way of being. It is the willingness to encourage others, to lift them up, to believe in them, even when they do not believe in themselves. It is the courage to lead by example, to live your values, to inspire others through your actions. Think of the people who have influenced you most. Were they the loudest, the most charismatic, the most powerful? Or were they the ones who listened, who cared, who believed in you? The ones who saw your potential, who encouraged your dreams, who stood by you in moments of doubt. These are the leaders who change lives, not by commanding, but by connecting, not by demanding, but by inspiring. And so, as you move through the world, remember this: every person you meet is longing for something. To be seen, to be heard, to be understood, to matter, to belong, to become. Your task is not to impose your will, but to awaken theirs, to arouse in them an eager want, not for your sake, but for theirs. For in helping others achieve their dreams, you achieve your own. In lifting others, you rise. In serving others, you lead. This is the heart of influence. This is the path to greatness. Not through force, but through understanding. Not through power, but through empathy. Not through self-interest, but through genuine interest in others. And as you walk this path, you will find that the world opens to you. Not because you demand it, but because you have earned it. Through your self-awareness, your empathy, your humility, your courage. through your willingness to listen, to learn, to lead with your heart. For in the end, the greatest power you possess is not the ability to bend others to your will, but the ability to awaken within them the desire to become their best selves, to arouse in the other person an eager want. This is the legacy of Dale Carnegie. This is the legacy you are called to create. And so, step forward, listen deeply, care deeply, lead with humility, with courage, with love. For in doing so, you will not only change the lives of others, you will change your own. And in that change, you will find the true meaning of influence, the true measure of success, the true joy of being human. There is a quiet revolution that begins not in the world outside, but in the silent chambers of your own mind. Before you can hope to move others, you must first learn to move yourself. This is the paradox of influence. The more deeply you understand your own motives, the more clearly you can see the motives of others. Self-awareness is the mirror in which all true connection is first glimpsed. Imagine for a moment, standing before a still lake at dawn. The surface is glass, reflecting the sky, the trees, the world as it is. But if the water is troubled, if the wind stirs, if a stone is thrown, the reflection is lost, distorted, untrue. So it is with the mind. When you are restless, when you are driven by unexamined fears or unchecked desires, your perception of others becomes clouded. You see not who they are, but who you fear or wish them to be. Dale Carnegie wrote, "When dealing with people, remember you are not dealing with creatures of logic, but with creatures of emotion." But how often do we forget that we too are creatures of emotion? How often do we project our own insecurities onto others, mistaking their silence for judgment, their disagreement for rejection? The first step to arousing an eager want in another is to recognize the wants that drive you. What do you seek in your conversations? Approval, control, validation, or do you seek to understand, to connect, to serve? Self-awareness is not self-absorption. It is not the endless turning inward, the analysis that paralyzes. It is the gentle, honest appraisal of your own heart. It is the willingness to ask, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? How might this shape the way I see and treat others? It is the courage to admit when you are wrong, the humility to change course, the wisdom to know that growth is a lifelong journey. Consider the story of a young manager, eager to prove herself in a new role. She enters meetings with a plan, a vision, a desire to impress. But she notices over time that her team grows quiet in her presence. Ideas dry up. Energy fades. She feels frustrated, unappreciated. One day she pauses. She asks herself, what am I bringing into this room? Am I listening, or am I waiting to be heard? In that moment of self-awareness, she shifts. She begins to ask questions, to invite dissent, to celebrate the contributions of others. Slowly, the room comes alive. The team begins to trust, to share, to create. The change did not begin with them. It began with her. This is the power of self-awareness. It is the foundation upon which all influence is built. For when you know yourself, your strengths, your blind spots, your deepest values, you become steady, unshakable. You are no longer tossed by the opinions of others, nor driven by the need to control. You become a safe harbor, a place where others can bring their true selves. And in that safety, something remarkable happens. People begin to open up. They share their ideas, their hopes, their fears. They trust you, not because you have all the answers, but because you are willing to listen, to learn, to grow alongside them. This is the beginning of true influence, not the power to change others, but the power to invite them into a shared journey of growth. Self-awareness is not a destination, but a daily practice. It is the willingness to pause, to reflect, to ask, how am I showing up today? What am I bringing into this moment? It is the discipline to seek feedback, to welcome criticism, to see every interaction as a mirror. For in the end, the greatest leaders are not those who command the most attention, but those who pay the most attention to themselves, to others, to the subtle currents that shape every conversation. So, as you move through your day, remember the first person you must influence is yourself. The first eager want you must arouse is your own. The want to grow, to understand, to become. For only then can you hope to awaken that same desire in others. Only then can you become the kind of person who inspires trust, who invites collaboration, who leads not by force, but by example. And as you cultivate this self-awareness, you will find that your influence grows, not through effort, but through presence, not through persuasion, but through authenticity. For in knowing yourself, you give others permission to know themselves. In accepting yourself, you create space for others to be accepted. And in leading yourself, you light the way for others to follow. There is a kind of listening that goes beyond the mere act of hearing words. It is a listening that reaches beneath the surface, that seeks not just to understand the message, but to feel the heartbeat behind it. This is the silent power of empathy, a force so gentle, so unassuming, that it often goes unnoticed, yet it is the very foundation upon which trust and influence are built. Imagine, for a moment, the difference between being heard and being understood. To be heard is to have your words acknowledged, perhaps even repeated back to you. But to be understood is to have your feelings mirrored, your intentions honored, your inner world recognized as real and valid. It is the difference between standing in a crowded room and feeling invisible, and meeting the gaze of someone who truly sees you. Empathy is the bridge that spans the chasm between isolation and connection. It is the willingness to step outside your own experience and enter the world of another, to set aside your judgments and assumptions, and simply be present. It is the courage to say, "Tell me your story, show me your world, let me walk with you, if only for a moment." Dale Carnegie knew that the deepest human need is to feel important, not in the sense of ego or pride, but in the sense of being valued, of mattering to someone else. When you listen with empathy, you give this gift. You say without words, "You are worthy of my time. Your thoughts are worthy of my attention. Your feelings are worthy of my care." Consider the story of a teacher who notices a quiet student at the back of the classroom. The student rarely speaks, rarely raises her hand, seems to shrink from the world. Most would overlook her, focus on the louder voices, the eager hands. But this teacher, guided by empathy, makes a point to greet her each morning, to ask about her interests, to listen without rushing or interrupting. Over time, the student begins to blossom. She finds her voice, her confidence, her place in the world. The teacher did not change her with grand gestures or clever words, but with the simple, steady power of listening. Empathy is not agreement. It does not require you to share another's beliefs or condone their actions. It asks only that you recognize their humanity, that you honor their experience as real. It is the discipline of curiosity, the willingness to ask, "What is it like to be you?" and to listen, not to reply, but to understand. In a world that moves ever faster, where attention is fragmented and conversations are often transactional, empathy is a radical act. It is a slowing down, a turning toward, a refusal to treat people as means to an end. It is the recognition that every person you meet is fighting battles you cannot see, carrying burdens you cannot know. When you listen with empathy, you become a sanctuary, a place where others can lay down their armor, if only for a moment. Think of the leaders who have shaped history not through force, but through understanding. Nelson Mandela, who listened to his jailers and found common ground. Eleanor Roosevelt, who sat with the marginalized and gave them a voice. Abraham Lincoln, who filled his cabinet with rivals and listened to their dissent. These were not acts of weakness, but of profound strength. For it is only the secure, the self-aware, who can afford to listen deeply, to open themselves to the perspectives of others. Empathy is not a talent, but a choice. It is a muscle that grows stronger with use, a habit that is cultivated through intention. It begins with small acts, putting away your phone when someone speaks, asking follow-up questions, reflecting back what you hear. It grows with practice, seeking out voices different from your own, reading widely, traveling, volunteering, stepping outside your comfort zone. It flourishes in humility, admitting when you do not understand, asking for clarification, apologizing when you get it wrong. But empathy alone is not enough. To truly arouse in another person an eager want, you must pair empathy with action. You must show through your words and deeds that you are not only willing to listen but willing to help, that you are not only interested in their story, but invested in their success. This is where listening becomes influence. When people feel heard, they become open to new ideas. When they feel understood, they become willing to trust. When they sense that you care about their needs, their dreams, their struggles, they become eager to work with you, to follow your lead, to join you in pursuit of a shared goal. Empathy is the soil in which influence takes root. It is the silent power that transforms conversations into collaborations, strangers into allies, ideas into movements. It is the force that turns ordinary interactions into moments of meaning, that turns fleeting encounters into lasting relationships. And so, as you move through your day, practice the art of listening, not just with your ears, but with your heart. Notice the stories behind the words, the emotions beneath the surface, the needs that go unspoken. Ask yourself, how can I make this person feel seen? How can I show them that they matter? For in doing so, you will not only arouse in them an eager want, but you will awaken within yourself a deeper sense of purpose, a richer experience of life. Empathy is not a destination, but a way of being. It is the quiet power that changes lives, one conversation at a time, and in a world that is hungry for connection. It is the gift that only you can give. There is a quiet strength that does not announce itself, a confidence that does not need to be declared. It is the kind of confidence that comes not from the certainty of always being right, but from the humility of being willing to learn. This is the paradox at the heart of authentic influence. The more humble you are, the more powerful your presence becomes. We live in a world that often confuses confidence with bravado, humility with weakness. But true confidence is not the absence of doubt. It is the willingness to move forward in spite of it. It is the courage to admit what you do not know, to ask questions, to seek guidance. It is the strength to celebrate the achievements of others, to lift them up without feeling diminished yourself. Dale Carnegie understood this well. He wrote, "Talk to someone about themselves and they'll listen for hours. But to do this sincerely, you must first set aside your own need to be the center of attention. You must be secure enough in yourself to let others shine." This is humility, not self-effacement, not shrinking from the world, but the quiet confidence that your worth is not dependent on comparison or competition. Consider the story of a young executive, newly promoted, eager to prove herself. She enters meetings determined to have all the answers, to impress her team with her expertise. But she soon finds that her team grows silent, reluctant to share ideas, hesitant to challenge her. The more she asserts her authority, the more isolated she feels. One day, she decides to try something different. She begins the next meeting with a simple admission. "I don't have all the answers. I need your help." The atmosphere shifts. Her team begins to speak up, to offer solutions, to take ownership. By showing humility, she unlocks the confidence of those around her, and in doing so becomes a far more effective leader. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is thinking of yourself less. It is the ability to step back, to make space for others, to recognize that every person you meet knows something you do not. It is the discipline to listen more than you speak, to ask more than you tell, to learn more than you teach. This kind of humility is magnetic. People are drawn to those who are comfortable in their own skin, who do not need to dominate or impress. They trust those who are willing to admit mistakes, to apologize, to change course when necessary. They respect those who give credit freely, who celebrate the contributions of others, who lead not by command but by example. Think of the leaders you admire most. Are they the ones who boast of their achievements, who demand recognition, who insist on being right? Or are they the ones who listen, who encourage, who empower? The ones who make you feel capable, valued, inspired. These are the leaders who leave a lasting mark, not because they are flawless, but because they are real. Humility is the soil in which confidence grows. When you are humble, you are free from the need to prove yourself. You are open to feedback, to growth, to change. You are willing to take risks, to try new things, to fail and begin again. You are resilient, adaptable, unafraid. But humility does not mean passivity. It does not mean shrinking from responsibility or avoiding difficult conversations. It means having the courage to speak your truth, to stand up for your values, to advocate for what you believe is right. It means being willing to lead, even when you are uncertain, even when you are afraid. This is the paradox. The more humble you are, the more confident you become. The more you focus on others, the more influence you wield. The more you give, the more you receive. The more you serve, the more you lead. Consider the story of Mahatma Gandhi, a man of slight stature and gentle voice who led a nation to freedom not through force, but through humility and conviction. Gandhi did not seek power for its own sake. He sought justice, dignity, peace. He listened to the people, learned from them, walked among them. His humility was his strength. His confidence was his quiet certainty in the rightness of his cause. He aroused in others an eager want, not to serve him, but to serve something greater than themselves. In your own life, you will face moments when your confidence wavers, when your humility is tested. You will be tempted to assert yourself, to defend your ego, to seek validation. In these moments, remember true influence is not about being the loudest voice in the room, but about being the most attentive listener. It is not about having all the answers, but about asking the right questions. It is not about being perfect, but about being present. So cultivate humility, practice gratitude, celebrate the successes of others, admit your mistakes, ask for help, listen more than you speak. And as you do, you will find that your confidence grows, not as a shield, but as a light that draws others to you, that inspires trust, that arouses in them an eager want to join you, to follow you, to become their best selves. This is the quiet power of humility. This is the foundation of authentic influence. And in a world hungry for real connection, it is the gift that only you can give. There is a subtle art to influence, one that is often misunderstood. Many believe influence is about persuasion, about clever arguments, or charismatic delivery. But the deepest, most lasting influence is not about changing minds. It is about touching hearts. It is about understanding at the most fundamental level what another person truly wants, and then aligning your vision with theirs. Dale Carnegie wrote, "The only way to influence people is to talk in terms of what the other person wants." This is not a trick or a tactic. It is a profound act of respect. It is the recognition that every person you meet is the center of their own universe, guided by their own hopes, fears, and desires. To influence them, you must first step into their world, see through their eyes, and feel with their heart. Imagine for a moment a conversation where you set aside your own agenda. You listen, not to reply, but to discover. You ask questions, not to steer, but to understand. You notice the subtle cues, the excitement in their voice when they speak of a dream, the hesitation when they mention a fear, the longing in their eyes when they talk about what matters most. In that space, you begin to see the contours of their inner landscape. You begin to understand what moves them, what inspires them, what holds them back. This is the art of appealing to what others want. It is not about manipulation or flattery. It is about genuine curiosity. It is about asking, what does this person care about? What do they hope for? What do they need? And then it is about finding the intersection between their desires and your own vision. Consider the story of a community organizer working to bring people together around a shared cause. She knows that each person in the room has their own reasons for being there. The parent who wants a safer neighborhood, the business owner who wants more customers, the student who wants a voice. Instead of imposing her own agenda, she listens. She asks each person what matters most to them. She weaves their answers into a common purpose, a vision that honors their individual wants while creating something greater than any one person could achieve alone. The result is not just compliance, but commitment, not just participation, but passion. This is the power of understanding. When people feel that you truly see them, that you care about what they care about, they become open to your influence. They become willing to listen, to collaborate, to join you in pursuit of a shared goal. They become eager, not because you have convinced them, but because you have connected with them. But this kind of understanding requires patience. It requires you to slow down, to set aside your assumptions, to be willing to be surprised. It requires you to ask questions that go beyond the surface. What would make this a success for you? What are you hoping to achieve? What worries you? What excites you? She requires you to listen not just to words, but to tone, to body language, to what is left unsaid. It also requires you to be honest about your own wants. Influence is not about self-sacrifice or pretending to have no needs of your own. It is about finding the place where your desires and theirs overlap. where your vision and theirs can coexist. It is about creating win-win solutions, about building bridges instead of walls. Think of the great negotiators, the peacemakers, the bridge builders of history. They did not succeed by overpowering their opponents, but by understanding them. They listened, they empathized, they sought common ground. They appealed to the best in others, to their hopes, their dreams, their sense of possibility. They aroused in others an eager want, not to surrender, but to join in creating something new. In your own life, you will have countless opportunities to practice this art. In every conversation, every meeting, every relationship, you can choose to focus on what you want, or you can choose to discover what the other person wants. You can choose to push your agenda, or you can choose to build a shared agenda. You can choose to seek compliance, or you can choose to inspire commitment. This is not always easy. It requires humility, patience, and a willingness to let go of control. It requires you to trust that by honoring the wants of others, you do not lose your own power. You multiply it. For when you help others achieve their dreams, you create allies, partners, friends. You create a network of people who are eager to work with you, to support you, to help you succeed. So, the next time you seek to influence someone, pause, ask yourself, what does this person truly want? How can I help them get it? How can we create something together that is greater than what either of us could achieve alone? And then listen. Listen with your whole self. Listen with empathy, with curiosity, with respect. For in the end, the art of influence is the art of understanding. It is the willingness to see the world through another's eyes, to feel with their heart, to walk beside them on the path to their dreams. It is the courage to put their wants at the center of your conversation, to build your vision on the foundation of their desires. You are their cells. This is how you arouse in the other person an eager want. This is how you become not just a leader, but a partner, a friend, a catalyst for change. And in doing so, you will find that your own wants are met, not through force, but through connection, not through persuasion, but through understanding, not through power, but through partnership. There is a moment in every relationship, every endeavor, when the winds shift and the skies darken. Criticism arrives, sometimes as a whisper, sometimes as a storm. Conflict emerges not as a sign of failure, but as a natural part of human connection. In these moments, your response becomes your legacy. Will you meet resistance with defensiveness or with grace? Will you see criticism as an attack or as an invitation to grow? Dale Carnegie wrote, "Any fool can criticize, condemn, and complain, and most fools do." But he also knew that the wise see criticism as a gift, a mirror that reveals not only the flaws of others, but the contours of their own character. To handle criticism and conflict with dignity is to choose growth over ego, understanding over pride. Imagine a leader confronted by a colleague in a tense meeting. The words sting, the tone is sharp, and the room grows quiet. The leader's first impulse is to defend, to justify, to push back. But instead, she pauses. She breathes. She listens. She asks herself, what truth might there be in these words? What can I learn? She thanks her colleague for the feedback, even if it is hard to hear. She seeks to understand, not to win. In that moment, she transforms conflict into connection, criticism into opportunity. This is grace under fire. It is the ability to remain calm when others are agitated, to stay open when others close off, to respond with curiosity rather than contempt. It is the discipline to separate the message from the delivery, to look past the heat of the moment and find the kernel of truth that can help you grow. Handling criticism with dignity does not mean accepting every judgment as fact. It means weighing each piece of feedback with discernment, asking, is this true? Is there something here I can use? It means thanking those who care enough to be honest, even when their honesty is imperfect. It means letting go of the need to be right and embracing the desire to be better. Conflict, too, is inevitable. Where there are people, there will be differences of opinion, of values, of vision. But conflict is not the enemy. It is the crucible in which trust is forged. When handled with respect, conflict becomes a source of creativity, a catalyst for growth. It is in the clash of ideas that new solutions are born, that teams become stronger, that relationships deepen. Consider the story of Abraham Lincoln, who famously filled his cabinet with rivals, men who disagreed with him, who challenged him, who forced him to defend his ideas. Lincoln did not seek to silence dissent. He welcomed it. He knew that only by inviting criticism, by embracing conflict, could he arrive at the best decisions. His humility allowed him to listen, to change his mind, to admit when he was wrong. His legacy endures not because he avoided conflict, but because he faced it with courage and grace. In your own life, you will face moments when criticism feels unfair, when conflict feels overwhelming. In these moments, remember, your response is your power. You can choose to react, or you can choose to reflect. You can choose to escalate, or you can choose to de-escalate. You can choose to see the other person as an adversary, or as a partner in growth. Practical wisdom can help. When criticized, pause before responding. Thank the person for their perspective. Even if you disagree, ask clarifying questions. Can you help me understand what led you to feel this way? Seek common ground. What can we do together to improve this? If emotions run high, suggest a break. Let's revisit this when we've both had time to reflect. Above all, remember that your dignity is not diminished by criticism. It is revealed by your response. There is a quiet heroism in those who handle conflict with grace. They are the ones who listen when it is hardest, who apologize when it is needed, who forgive when it is possible. They are the ones who turn adversaries into allies, who transform tension into trust, who build bridges where others build walls. This is not easy. It requires self-awareness, empathy, humility, and courage. It requires you to see every criticism as a chance to learn, every conflict as a chance to connect. It requires you to put the relationship above the need to be right, to seek understanding above victory. But the rewards are profound. When you handle criticism and conflict with dignity, you become a person others trust, respect, and want to follow. You become a leader not just in title but in spirit. You arouse in others an eager want, not to avoid you but to work with you, to grow with you, to build something meaningful together. So the next time you find yourself under fire, remember, grace is your shield, dignity is your strength. Meet criticism with curiosity, conflict with compassion. For in these moments, you reveal not only your character, but your capacity to influence, to inspire, to lead. There is a rare and radiant quality that sets certain people apart, not their intelligence, not their charm, not even their accomplishments, but the way they make others feel in their presence. These are the people who, long after the conversation has ended, linger in our memory like a melody. They are unforgettable, not because they sought to be, but because they gave us the gift of genuine interest. Dale Carnegie wrote, "You can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you." This is not a strategy, but a way of being. It is the art of turning your attention outward, of making the person before you feel like the most important person in the world, if only for a moment. Imagine for a moment the last time someone truly listened to you, not out of obligation, but out of curiosity and care. Perhaps they remembered a detail from a previous conversation, asked about your family, your dreams, your struggles. Perhaps they looked you in the eye, set aside their distractions, and gave you the rare gift of undivided attention. How did it feel? Did you not walk away lighter, more seen, more alive? This is the power of genuine interest. It is the force that transforms acquaintances into friends, colleagues into collaborators, strangers into allies. It is the secret ingredient in every lasting relationship, the invisible thread that binds us together, but genuine interest cannot be faked. People sense, almost instinctively, when your attention is transactional, when your questions are rehearsed, when your smile is forced. True interest is a form of love, a willingness to step outside your own concerns and enter the world of another. It is the discipline of curiosity, the practice of remembering, the art of noticing. Consider the story of a young professional at a networking event, surrounded by people eager to make connections. Most conversations are brief, polite, forgettable, but then she meets someone who asks, "What excites you most about your work?" The question is simple, but the interest is real. The conversation deepens. They talk about passions, challenges, hopes for the future. Months later, when an opportunity arises, it is this connection that comes to mind, not because of a business card exchanged, but because of a moment of genuine interest. To become unforgettable, you must first forget yourself. You must set aside the urge to impress, to perform, to be remembered. Instead, focus on remembering others, their names, their stories, their dreams. Make it your mission to leave every person you meet feeling better about themselves, more hopeful about their future, more confident in their worth. Practical wisdom can help. Use people's names often and sincerely. Ask open-ended questions that invite stories, not just answers. Listen for what is not said, for the hopes and fears beneath the surface. Follow up on previous conversations. How did that project turn out? How is your mother doing? Did you ever take that trip you mentioned? These small acts of attention are the building blocks of trust, the seeds of loyalty, the foundation of influence. But becoming unforgettable is not about keeping score. It is not about what you get in return. It is about the quiet joy of making a difference, of brightening someone's day, of being a source of encouragement and hope. It is about seeing the best in others and helping them see it in themselves. Think of the people who have shaped your life. Were they not the ones who believed in you, who encouraged you, who took the time to know you? The ones who saw your potential, who remembered your dreams, who stood by you in moments of doubt? These are the people we never forget. Not because they were extraordinary, but because they made us feel extraordinary. In a world that is often hurried, distracted, and self-absorbed, genuine interest is a revolutionary act. It is the antidote to loneliness, the cure for cynicism, the spark that ignites possibility. It is the force that turns fleeting encounters into lasting relationships, that transforms ordinary days into moments of meaning. So as you move through your life, make it your mission to become unforgettable. Not by seeking attention, but by giving it. Not by demanding recognition, but by offering it. Not by trying to be interesting, but by being interested. For in the end, the greatest legacy you can leave is not what you have accomplished, but how you have made others feel. The eager want you arouse in others is not just to follow you, but to become more fully themselves. To dream bigger, to reach higher, to believe that they too can be unforgettable. This is the gift of genuine interest. This is the secret to lasting influence. And in a world hungry for connection, it is the gift that only you can give. There is a kind of leadership that does not rely on titles, authority, or the power to command. It is a leadership that emerges quietly, almost invisibly, in the way you encourage others, in the example you set, in the hope you inspire. This is the leadership that endures, the leadership of the heart. Dale Carnegie believed that the deepest hunger of the human soul is the desire to be appreciated. Encouragement is the nourishment that allows people to grow beyond their fears, to reach for possibilities they never dared to imagine. It is the gentle hand on the shoulder, the quiet word of belief, the unwavering faith that says, "You can do this. I see something in you." Think of the leaders who have shaped your life, not the ones who demanded, but the ones who inspired. Not the ones who pointed out your flaws, but the ones who saw your strengths. Not the ones who stood above you, but the ones who walked beside you. These are the leaders who change lives, not by force, but by faith. Encouragement is not empty praise. It is not flattery or false affirmation. It is the honest recognition of effort, the celebration of progress, the belief in potential. It is the willingness to see the best in others, even when they cannot see it in themselves. It is the courage to say, "I believe in you," and to mean it. Consider the story of a young athlete struggling with self-doubt after a string of failures. Her coach does not berate her, does not focus on her mistakes. Instead, he reminds her of her past successes, points out her resilience, encourages her to keep going. He sets an example through his own discipline, his own perseverance, his own humility. Slowly, the athlete begins to believe again, not just in her coach, but in herself. She rises, not because she was pushed, but because she was lifted. This is the power of encouragement. It is the force that transforms potential into achievement, that turns fear into courage, that makes the impossible possible. It is the quiet voice that says, "You matter, your efforts are seen, your dreams are worth pursuing." But encouragement alone is not enough. Leadership is also about example. It is about living your values, embodying your principles, walking your talk. It is about showing, not just telling, what is possible. It is about being the kind of person others want to follow, not because they have to, but because they want to. Think of Nelson Mandela, who led by example through decades of hardship and injustice. He forgave his captors, reached out to his enemies, built bridges where others saw only walls. His leadership was not in his words alone, but in his actions, in the way he treated others, in the way he lived his life. He aroused in others an eager want, not to serve him, but to serve a cause greater than themselves. In your own life, you have the opportunity to lead every day, not just in grand gestures, but in small acts of kindness, in moments of integrity, in the way you treat those who can do nothing for you. You lead when you listen, when you encourage, when you set an example of courage, humility, and hope. Practical wisdom can help. Notice the efforts of those around you and acknowledge them sincerely. Offer specific praise. I admire the way you handled that challenge, or your creativity made a real difference. Share your own struggles and how you overcame them. Admit your mistakes and show how you learned from them. Be the first to apologize, the first to forgive, the first to reach out. Leadership through encouragement and example is not about perfection. It is about authenticity. It is about being real, being vulnerable, being willing to grow. It is about creating an environment where others feel safe to take risks, to fail, to try again. It is about building a culture of trust, of respect, of possibility. And as you lead in this way, you will find that others begin to rise. They will take ownership, show initiative, bring their best selves to the table. They will become leaders in their own right, inspired by your example, encouraged by your belief. This is the legacy of true leadership, not in the number of followers you have, but in the number of leaders you create, not in the power you wield, but in the hope you inspire, not in the recognition you receive, but in the lives you touch. So, as you move through your life, lead with encouragement, lead by example, be the person who lifts others, who believes in them, who helps them see what is possible. For in doing so, you will arouse in them an eager want, not just to follow, but to lead, not just to achieve, but to inspire, not just to succeed, but to serve. This is the leadership that endures. This is the influence that transforms. And in a world longing for hope, it is the gift that only you can give. There comes a moment, often in the stillness after striving, when you realize that the greatest power you possess is not the ability to command, but the ability to connect. Not the force to bend others to your will, but the quiet strength to awaken in them a desire to become more. This is the legacy of every true leader, every unforgettable friend, every soul who has dared to lead with their heart. In the end, all the techniques, all the wisdom, all the stories and strategies come down to this: the courage to see others as they are, and the clarity to see yourself as you are. The willingness to step into another's world, to listen with empathy, to speak with humility, to lead by example. The quiet power to arouse in the other person an eager want, not for your sake but for theirs. Not to win them over, but to help them win themselves. Think of the world you wish to live in. Is it a world of competition, of isolation, of striving for recognition, or is it a world of collaboration, of belonging, of shared purpose? The world you long for begins with you, with every conversation, every act of listening, every moment of encouragement. You are building that world, one relationship at a time. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward in spite of it. It is the willingness to be vulnerable, to risk rejection, to offer your heart even when you are unsure how it will be received. It is the strength to stand in your truth, to speak with honesty, to act with integrity. It is the quiet resolve to keep showing up, to keep caring, to keep believing in the possibility of change. Clarity is the gift of self-awareness, the discipline of reflection, the wisdom to know what matters most. It is the ability to see beyond the noise, to focus on the needs and desires of those around you. It is the vision to imagine what could be, and the patience to nurture it into being. It is the humility to admit when you are wrong, the openness to learn, the grace to forgive, and connection. Connection is the thread that weaves it all together. It is the force that turns strangers into friends, colleagues into collaborators, dreams into reality. It is the recognition that we are all, at our core, longing for the same things: to be seen, to be heard, to be valued, to belong. When you arouse in another person an eager want, you are not just influencing them, you are inviting them into a shared journey, a partnership of possibility. This is the quiet power within you. It does not shout, it does not demand, It does not seek the spotlight. It moves gently, steadily, like water shaping stone. It is the power to listen when others speak, to encourage when others doubt, to forgive when others falter. It is the power to see the best in others, and to help them see it in themselves. You do not need to be extraordinary to make an extraordinary difference. You do not need to have all the answers, or to be free of doubt, or to never make mistakes. You need only to care, to listen, to try, to keep showing up, day after day, with an open heart and a willing spirit. Think of the legacy you wish to leave. Not the titles, not the accolades, not the fleeting applause, but the lives you have touched, the hearts you have lifted, the dreams you have inspired. This is the true measure of success. This is the quiet joy of being human. So as you step forward from this moment, remember the world is waiting for your courage, your clarity, your connection. There are people who need your encouragement, your example, your belief in. There are dreams that will only be realized because you took the time to listen, to care, to lead with love. You have within you the power to arouse in others, an eager want, to awaken their hopes, to ignite their passions, to help them become more than they ever thought possible. Use this power wisely. Use it generously. Use it with humility and with joy. For in the end, it is not what you have achieved that will be remembered, but how you have made others feel. Not the influence you have wielded, but the lives you have changed. Not the victories you have won, but the hearts you have touched. This is your legacy. This is your quiet power. This is the gift you are called to give. Step forward. Lead with your heart. Rise with your mind. Win with your humanity. And in doing so, you will not only change the lives of others, you will change your own. And in that change, you will find the true meaning of influence, the true measure of greatness, the true joy of being alive. And so, as the echoes of these words settle and the world resumes its familiar rhythm, remember this: every day, in ways both seen and unseen, you are shaping the lives around you. Every conversation, every gesture of encouragement, every moment of genuine listening is a ripple that moves outward, touching shores you may never see. You do not need to wait for a grand stage or a perfect moment. The opportunity to arouse in another person an eager want is woven into the fabric of ordinary days. At the breakfast table, in the hallway at work, in the quiet exchange with a friend or a stranger. It is found in the courage to ask, "What matters to you?" and the humility to truly listen for the answer. It is found in the patience to nurture another's dream, in the grace to forgive, in the strength to believe in someone who has forgotten how. The world does not remember us for the noise we make, but for the warmth we leave behind. The greatest influence is not measured in followers or fame, but in the quiet confidence you inspire, the hope you rekindle, the dignity you restore. This is the legacy of those who lead with empathy, who listen with their hearts, who lift others not for applause but for the simple joy of seeing them rise. As you move forward, let your life be a testament to the power of connection. Let your words be seeds of encouragement, your actions a mirror of your values, your presence a safe harbor for those in need. Lead not by striving to be remembered, but by striving to remember others. For in the end, it is not the eager want you arouse for yourself, but the eager want you awaken in others, that will echo long after you are gone. This is your quiet revolution. This is your invitation. Go forth. See others, hear others, believe in others, and in doing so, discover the quiet, unstoppable power that has always lived within you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. Thank you for being the difference the world so deeply needs. If Dale's teachings have found a home in your heart, let them become more than words. You do not need to wait for another tomorrow. The seeds of change are already in your hands. Begin now, however quietly, however imperfectly. Let these principles guide your next conversation, your next act of kindness, your next moment of courage. The path to success is not a distant horizon. It is the step you choose to take today. The rest is yours to write. If Dale's teachings have found a home in your heart, let them become more than words. You do not need to wait for another tomorrow. The seeds of change are already in your hands. Begin now, however quietly, however imperfectly. Let these principles guide your next conversation, your next act of kindness, your next moment of courage. The path to success is not a distant horizon. It is the step you choose to take today. The rest is yours to write. Thank you for listening and for daring to become the difference. See you again in my next sharing.